The words, "stand together," seemed to echo in the vast chamber long after Jake Morrison had spoken them. The alien representatives sat in uncomfortable silence, looking at each other with expressions that ranged from confusion to what might have been shame. For the first time since the session had begun, no one was laughing at the humans. High Counselor Veltar slowly sank back into his chair, his elegant features showing something that Jake had not seen before. It might have been doubt or perhaps even fear. "You suggest that our evolution has made us weaker," he said, his voice lacking its earlier confidence. "Not weaker," Jake replied carefully. "Different. You have gained much in your evolution, but you have also lost something important. The question is whether that loss matters." The ethereal collective's representative pulsed dimly, its light flickering like a candle in the wind. "But surely intelligence and technology are superior to primitive instincts. We have moved beyond the need for such basic responses." Jake nodded. "You are absolutely right. Intelligence and technology are wonderful things. They have allowed your species to achieve amazing things. But let me ask you a question." He gestured to the holographic display, which now showed a map of the galaxy with several areas marked in red. "Do you see these red zones?" The representatives looked at the map. The red areas seemed to be scattered throughout the galaxy, some small and others covering entire sectors. "These are areas where your advanced technology has failed," Jake explained. "Places where equipment malfunctions, where communication systems break down, where the sophisticated solutions you rely on simply do not work." Zecthal's forearms gestured dismissively. "Equipment failure is rare. Our technology is very reliable." "Is it?" Lisa Park stepped forward from her position near the back of the chamber. She activated her own datapad, and the holographic display changed to show a series of technical reports. "These are maintenance records from your various fleets and installations. In the past year alone, there have been over 3,000 significant equipment failures across all represented species." The blue stone creature near the front made a sound that might have been surprise. "That number seems high." "It is higher than you might think," Lisa continued, "because most of these failures are not reported publicly. They are classified as routine maintenance issues or minor technical problems. But when you look at the cumulative effect, the pattern becomes clear." Jake walked closer to the assembled representatives. "Your technology is indeed very advanced, but it is also very complex. The more complex a system becomes, the more ways it can fail. And when it does fail, what happens then?" "We repair it," the Kethmori representative said, clicking its mandibles uncertainly. "Do you?" Colonel Bell asked, stepping forward. "Or do you retreat to a safe distance and wait for specialized repair teams? Do you abandon the mission until better equipment can be brought in? Do you fall back to defensive positions and hope the problem resolves itself?" The chamber stirred uneasily. Several representatives were now looking at their own datapads, perhaps checking their own records of equipment failures and mission reports. "Let me tell you about something that happened just 3 weeks ago," Jake said. The holographic display changed to show a space station orbiting a distant planet. "This is Research Station Omega-7 in the Centauri sector. It was conducting important scientific research when a solar flare damaged its main computer systems." The image zoomed in to show the station in detail. It was clearly a sophisticated facility, with multiple research modules and advanced equipment visible through its transparent sections. "The station sent out a distress call," Jake continued. "The computer failure had disabled life support systems, navigation, and communication. There were 47 researchers from various species aboard, and they had perhaps 6 hours of emergency power remaining." High Counselor Veltar leaned forward. "What was the response?" 7 ships arrived within 4 hours, Jake replied. 5 from the Ethereal Collective, 2 from the Vorthak fleet. All of them had the capability to dock with the station and evacuate the researchers. "And they did so?" Veltar asked. Jake shook his head. "They maintained a safe distance and began scanning the station. They wanted to understand exactly what had gone wrong before taking any action." They were concerned that the solar flare might have caused other damage that could endanger their own ships. The ethereal collective's representative pulsed weakly. That was the logical approach. It would have been dangerous to dock without understanding the full situation. How long would this analysis have taken? Jake asked. Approximately 8 hours, the representative replied. 8 hours, Jake repeated. For researchers who had only 6 hours of emergency power remaining, the silence in the chamber was now so complete that Jake could hear the soft breathing of the various life forms around him. Fortunately, Jake continued, there was also a human cargo ship in the area. The captain received the distress call and immediately changed course for the station. The holographic display now showed a much smaller vessel approaching the damaged station. Compared to the sleek alien ships maintaining their safe distance, the human ship looked crude and primitive. The human ship had no sophisticated scanning equipment, Jake explained. No advanced safety systems, no specialized rescue gear. It was just a basic cargo hauler with a crew of 8 people. What did they do? The Kethmori representative asked, though its tone suggested it already knew the answer. They docked with the station immediately, Colonel Bell replied. No analysis. No safety protocols, no careful planning. They simply attached their ship to the station and began evacuating researchers as fast as they could move them. Jake nodded. Within 2 hours, all 47 researchers had been transferred to the human ship. The cargo hold was packed beyond its safety limits, the life support systems were strained to their maximum capacity, and the ship itself was dangerously overloaded. That was extremely risky, Zechthel protested. If something had gone wrong, everyone could have died. Yes, Jake agreed. It was extremely risky. But do you know what happened when the human captain was asked why he took such a chance? The chamber waited. He said, people were dying. We couldn't just watch. Jake let those words hang in the air for a moment. Not the situation required. Analysis, not we needed to minimize risk, just people were dying. The holographic display changed again, now showing the human ship successfully departing from the station with all the researchers safely aboard. In the background, the alien vessels were still maintaining their safe distance, their scanning operations incomplete. This is what I mean when I talk about standing together, Jake said. It is not about technology or intelligence or careful planning. It is about the willingness to put others before yourself, even when the smart thing to do is to walk away. High Counselor Veltar stood up again, his tall form seeming somehow smaller than before. Are you saying that our caution is wrong? That we should ignore risks and act without thinking? No, Jake replied. I'm saying that there is a difference between being careful and being paralyzed by the fear of loss. You have become so concerned with preserving what you have that you have forgotten how to fight for what others need. Colonel Bell stepped closer to the center of the chamber. In human military training, we have a saying, leave no one behind. It means that we never abandon our people, no matter how dangerous the situation becomes. It means that we will take any risk necessary to bring everyone home. But that could lead to greater losses, the bluestone creature protested. Could it? Jake asked. Or does it lead to something else entirely? Something that makes the group stronger than any individual could ever be? He gestured to Lisa, who activated a new display showing human military statistics. These numbers show casualty rates for human military units compared to alien forces in similar situations, Jake explained. What they reveal might surprise you. Despite taking greater risks, human forces actually suffer fewer total casualties than alien forces. Incomparable conflicts. How is that possible? Veltar asked that Jake smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Because when soldiers know that no one will abandon them, they fight harder. When they trust their comrades completely, they can accomplish impossible things. When they stand together, they become something greater than the sum of their parts. The alien representatives were now staring at the data with expressions of disbelief and growing understanding. This, Jake said quietly, is what humanity offers to the galaxy. Not advanced technology, not superior weapons, not longer lifespans. We offer the willingness to stand together, no matter what the cost. The chamber was so quiet that Jake Morrison could hear the soft humming of air recyclers and the distant sounds of machinery keeping the massive space station running. The alien representatives sat motionless, staring at the data displays floating above them. Their earlier mockery had been replaced by something Jake had not expected to see: uncertainty. High Counselor Veltar was the first to break the silence. His tall, elegant form seemed to have lost some of its commanding presence as he looked down at Jake from his elevated position. "These statistics you show us," he said slowly, "they suggest that our methods are less effective than yours. But surely there must be other factors involved." Jake nodded respectfully. "You are absolutely right to question the data, High Counselor. Statistics can be misleading if taken out of context." He gestured to Lisa, who brought up a new display. "So let me give you the full context." The holographic display now showed a detailed breakdown of military engagements, rescue operations, and crisis responses from across the galaxy over the past 20 years. The information was organized by species, with clear comparisons between different approaches to similar situations. "What this data shows," Jake explained, "is not that humans are better fighters or smarter strategists. What it shows is that our willingness to accept risk for the sake of others creates a chain reaction that makes everyone safer." Zekthal's forearms moved restlessly as he studied the information. "I do not understand. How does accepting more risk make things safer?" "Colonel." Bell stepped forward to answer. "Because when people know that others will come for them, they are more willing to take the actions necessary to complete the mission. When they trust their teammates completely, they can focus on the job instead of worrying about their own survival." The Ethereal Collective's representative pulsed dimly. "But this seems to contradict basic survival instincts. Individual preservation should be the primary concern. Should it?" Jake asked. "Let me tell you about something that happened during our recent conflict with the Raider Coalition in the Outer Rim. A human patrol ship encountered a Raider base that was about to attack a civilian transport carrying refugees from the war zones. The display changed to show a tactical map of the engagement. The human ship was clearly outnumbered, facing 3 Raider vessels that were larger and better armed. The logical response would have been for the patrol ship to retreat and call for reinforcements," Jake continued. "The captain had every reason to avoid the fight. His ship was outgunned, his crew was small, and the odds of survival were poor. What did he do?" the Kathmori representative asked, its mandibles clicking nervously. "He attacked immediately," Colonel Bell replied. "No hesitation, no careful planning, no analysis of odds. He saw civilians in danger and acted." "That was suicide," the blue stone creature protested. "1 ship against 3? He must have been destroyed." Jake smiled. "That is what the Raiders thought too, but they had never fought humans before. They expected the patrol ship to retreat or at least to try to escape when the battle turned against them. Instead, the human crew fought with such determination that the Raiders began to panic." The tactical display now showed the progression of the battle. The human ship, despite taking heavy damage, continued to press its attack with relentless aggression. "The human captain sent out a distress call," Jake continued, "but he did not retreat to wait for help. He kept fighting, knowing that every minute he delayed the Raiders was another minute for the refugee transport to escape." "And the reinforcements?" High Counselor Veltar asked. 2 more human ships arrived within 30 minutes, Colonel Bell replied. "They could have conducted a careful approach, analyzed the situation, developed a proper battle plan. Instead, they saw their comrade under attack and immediately joined the fight." Jake gestured to the display, which now showed all 3 human ships engaging the Raider force. The Raiders had never seen anything like it. Ships that continued fighting even when severely damaged. Crews that refused to retreat even when faced with impossible odds. Pilots who deliberately rammed enemy vessels to save their teammates. The chamber stirred uneasily. Several representatives appeared to be uncomfortable with the description of such intense combat. "The battle lasted less than an hour," Jake continued. All 3 raider ships were destroyed or disabled. The refugee transport escaped safely with over 2,000 civilians aboard. And the human casualties? Zechthel asked. 17 dead, 31 wounded. Colonel Bell replied matter-of-factly. The patrol ship was completely destroyed, and the other 2 vessels required major repairs. So many losses, the Ethereal Collective's representative murmured. Surely a more careful approach would have resulted in fewer casualties. Would it? Jake asked. A more careful approach would have meant waiting for reinforcements, conducting reconnaissance, developing a proper battle plan. That would have taken at least 4 hours. And, Veltar prompted, the refugee transport would have been caught and destroyed, Jake replied simply. 2,000 civilians would have died instead of 17 soldiers. Which do you think is the better outcome? The silence returned to the chamber, but this time it felt different. The representatives were not just quiet. They were thinking. Lisa stepped forward and activated a final display. This one showed casualty statistics from conflicts across the galaxy, broken down by the type of response used. This data covers every major engagement in the past decade, she explained. What it shows is that conflicts resolved quickly through aggressive action result in significantly fewer total casualties than conflicts prolonged by cautious approaches. The mathematics are clear, Jake added. When you are willing to accept short-term risks to protect others, the long-term survival rate for everyone increases dramatically. High Counselor Veltar stood up and walked to the center of the chamber, positioning himself directly in front of Jake. The tall alien looked down at the human for a long moment before speaking. You have presented compelling evidence, he said slowly. But you ask us to abandon millions of years of evolution, to return to primitive responses that our species outgrew long ago. No, Jake replied firmly. I'm asking you to remember that. Some things should not be outgrown. Some instincts exist because they work. Some primitive responses are primitive because they are fundamental to survival. Colonel Bell nodded. Evolution is not always about becoming more complex. Sometimes it is about remembering what made you strong in the first place. Jake looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. The galaxy is facing challenges that cannot be solved by individual species acting alone. The refugee crises, the resource wars, the pirate raids, these problems require cooperation. They require species that are willing to risk themselves. For others, and you believe humanity can provide this? Veltar asked. I believe humanity can remind you how to provide it yourselves, Jake replied. We are not asking to replace your advanced civilizations. We are asking to help you remember what it means to stand together. Veltar was quiet for a long moment. Looking around at the other representatives, Jake could see uncertainty in the alien's eyes, but also something else. Something that might have been hope? The Council will need time to consider this proposal, Veltar finally announced. We will reconvene in one standard cycle to vote on humanity's application for membership. As the representatives began to file out of the chamber, Jake noticed that they were no longer making mocking gestures or dismissive sounds. Several of them stopped to look at him with what appeared to be respect, and a few even nodded politely as they passed. The Galaxy Council had entered this session expecting to quickly reject humanity's application. Instead, they found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about evolution, advancement, and strength. For the first time in their long history, the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had been left completely speechless. By a species they had dismissed as primitive. And Jake Morrison knew that regardless of how they voted, the conversation itself had already changed everything. The word courage hung in the air like a challenge. Jake Morrison watched as the alien representatives looked at each other with confusion and what might have been embarrassment. He had touched something that they did not want to talk about, something that made them uncomfortable. High Counselor Veltar stood up from his elevated seat, his tall form casting long shadows across the chamber. You speak of courage as if it is something we lack, he said, his voice carrying a note of irritation. We have faced many dangers in our long histories. We have survived wars, natural disasters, and countless other threats. Have you? Jake asked politely. Or have you simply developed technologies that allow you to avoid those dangers altogether? The ethereal collective's representative pulsed. Brighter, its energy form flickering with what appeared to be anger. We have evolved beyond the need for such primitive responses. We solve problems with intelligence and planning, not with reckless bravery. Jake nodded. That is very wise. Planning and intelligence are certainly important. He touched his wrist. Device again, and the holographic display changed to show a series of documents floating in the air above the chamber. These are incident reports from your various military forces. Official records of conflicts and emergencies from the past 5 years. Several representatives leaned forward to look at the documents. Jake noticed that some of them seemed surprised to see their own classified information being displayed. How did you get these? Zechthel demanded, his 4 arms gesturing angrily. We asked for them, Jake replied calmly. We sent formal requests to every species represented here, explaining that we needed to understand the challenges facing the galaxy. Your governments were happy to provide the information, thinking it would prove how advanced you are compared to us. The Kethmori representative clicked its mandibles nervously. What is your point, human? Jake gestured to the floating documents. These reports show a very interesting pattern. In situation after situation, your forces retreat when faced with direct confrontation. You fall back when your technology fails. You abandon positions when the fighting gets too close. That is tactical wisdom, the blue stone creature protested. There is no point in losing troops unnecessarily. Is there not? Jake asked. Let me read you a specific example. He pointed to one of the documents, and it expanded so everyone could see it clearly. This is from the Vorthik Third Fleet, dated 6 months ago. A group of refugees was trapped on a space station that was about to explode. The station's life support was failing, and there was only a small window of time to evacuate everyone. The Vorthak representative, Zechthel, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. According to this report, Jake continued, the Vorthik rescue ships arrived at the station but refused to dock because the structure was unstable. They decided it was too dangerous to risk their crews and ships. The refugees were told to wait for specialized equipment that would arrive in several hours. That was the logical decision, Zechthel said defensively. We could not risk our people for strangers. The station exploded 47 minutes later, Jake said quietly. 231 refugees died, including 68 children. The specialized equipment arrived 3 hours after that. The chamber fell silent again. The only sound was the soft humming of the life support systems. Now let me tell you what happened in a similar situation involving humans, Jake continued. The holographic display changed to show a different report. This incident occurred 2 years ago. A human merchant vessel encountered a damaged alien ship with a failing reactor. The ship contained 43 crew members from the Zephyr species. Jake paused, looking around the chamber. The human ship was not designed for rescue operations. It had no special equipment, no advanced safety systems, no military training. It was just a cargo hauler carrying farm equipment to the outer rim. What did they do? High Counselor Veltar asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. They docked with the damaged ship immediately, Jake replied. They brought all 43 crew members aboard their own vessel, even though it meant severe overcrowding and a shortage of life support resources. They then stayed in the area for 6 hours, using their own tools and spare parts to repair the damaged ship well enough for it to reach a proper repair facility. The ethereal collective's representative flickered. That was very risky. If something had gone wrong, both crews could have been lost. Yes, Jake agreed. It was very risky. But do you know what the human captain said when asked about his decision? The chamber waited, he said. They needed help. That's all that mattered. Jake let those words sink in before continuing. This was not an isolated incident. In the past 10 years, human ships have rescued over 15,000 beings from various species. We have pulled crews from sinking vessels, evacuated people from failing space stations, and provided aid during natural disasters. And how many humans have died in these rescue operations? The Kethmori representative asked. 412, Jake replied without hesitation. 412 humans have died while trying to save others. We remember every one of their names. The silence in the chamber was now so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. You see, Jake continued, this is what I mean when I talk about courage. It is not about being fearless. Our rescue crews are always afraid. They know the risks, they understand the dangers, but they go anyway because lives are at stake. Colonel. Bell stood up from his seat in the back of the chamber and walked forward to join Jake. The military officer's presence seemed to make several of the alien representatives uncomfortable. The ambassador is being polite, Bell said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen real combat. What he is trying to tell you is that your species have become so concerned with your own safety that you have forgotten how to protect others. Zechthel-S mandibles clicked angrily. We have sophisticated military forces. We have advanced weapons and defensive systems. Do you? Bell asked. Then why have your conflicts been dragging on for decades? Why can't your sophisticated forces end the wars that are tearing apart entire sectors of the galaxy? The chamber stirred uneasily. Several representatives began whispering to each other. I will tell you why, Bell continued. Because your forces are not willing to take the risks necessary to win. They retreat when casualties mount. They fall back when equipment fails. They abandon missions when the situation becomes dangerous. That is not true, the bluestone creature protested. Is it not? Jake asked. Lisa, please show them the comparative casualty reports. Lisa Park activated her datapad and new documents appeared in the holographic display. These showed military statistics from various conflicts across the galaxy. These numbers show something very interesting, Jake explained. In conflicts where human forces have been involved, the casualty rates are actually lower overall, even though human soldiers are more willing to take risks. How is that possible? High Counselor Veltar asked. Because when soldiers know that their comrades will not abandon them, they fight more effectively, Colonel Bell replied. When they know that someone will come for them if they fall, they are more willing to advance. When they trust each other completely, they can accomplish things that individual courage cannot. Jake nodded. This is what we call unit cohesion. It is the idea that the group is stronger than the sum of its parts. But it only works when every member of the group is willing to sacrifice for the others. The alien representatives were now looking at each other with expressions that Jake could not read, but he sensed that the mood in the chamber had changed. The mockery was gone, replaced by something else, something that might have been uncertainty or even fear. You have evolved beyond many things, Jake said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. But in your evolution you have also left something behind, something that the galaxy needs now more than ever. He paused, looking directly at High Counselor Veltar. You have forgotten how to stand together. Jake Morrison stepped through the massive doors of the Galaxy Council chamber and felt his heart skip a beat. The room was enormous, bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high above his head that he could barely see where it ended. Strange lights floated in the air without any visible source, casting rainbow colors across the walls all around him. Creatures from dozens of different worlds sat in curved rows of seats that seemed to be made from some kind of glowing crystal. Some of the beings looked like giant insects with too many arms and legs. Others appeared to be made of pure light, floating in glass spheres that hummed with energy. There were creatures that looked like walking trees, others that seemed to be living rocks, and some that Jake could not even begin to describe. The sound in the chamber was unlike anything he had ever heard. Clicks, buzzes, musical tones, and strange humming noises mixed together as the alien representatives talked among themselves. Jake's universal translator worked hard to turn all these sounds into words he could understand. But even then, many of the conversations made no sense. To him, Jake wore a simple black suit, the kind that diplomats on Earth had worn for centuries. Beside him walked Lisa Park, a young woman who served as his assistant, and Colonel Ryan Bell, a military officer who had been assigned to help with security matters. The three humans looked very plain compared to the colorful and exotic beings around them. As they made their way to their assigned seats, Jake noticed that the other representatives were staring at them. Some pointed with whatever limbs they had. Others made sounds that the translator could not convert into words, but Jake suspected they were not saying nice things. A tall creature with 4 arms and a face like a praying mantis turned to look at them. This was Zechthel, the representative of the Vorthic species. His voice came through the translator as cold and mechanical. "Look, everyone. The monkeys have finally arrived. How cute that they think they belong here with real civilizations." Laughter filled the chamber. At least, Jake assumed it was laughter. The sounds were very different from human laughter, but the meaning was clear enough. The alien representatives found something very funny about the humans being there. A floating ball of light near the center of the chamber pulsed brighter for a moment. This was the representative of the ethereal collective, beings made of pure energy. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. They have not even learned to fold space properly. Their ships still burn chemicals like children playing with matches. More laughter echoed through the chamber. Jake felt his face grow hot with embarrassment, but he kept walking. He had expected this kind of treatment. The Galaxy Council had been around for over 3,000 years, and humanity had only been in space for a few decades. To these ancient civilizations, humans were nothing more than babies taking their first steps. The seating arrangement made the insult even clearer. The most important and powerful species sat in the front rows, closest to the center of the chamber where the speakers would stand. The newer and less important species sat further back. Jake and his team were given seats in the very last row. In a corner where their voices would barely be heard, Lisa leaned over to whisper in his ear, "Sir, should we say something?" "They are being very rude." Jake shook his head slightly. "Not yet. Let them talk. I want to hear what they have to say." He had spent 15 years preparing for this moment. He had studied every species in the Galaxy Council, learning about their cultures, their technologies, their strengths, and their weaknesses. He knew more about these aliens than most of them knew about each other. But they did not know that. Yet the chamber began to quiet down as a very tall, graceful being walked to the center of the room. This was High Counselor Veltar, the leader of the Galaxy Council. His species had been traveling between stars since before humans had learned to make fire. He looked around the chamber with obvious pride and superiority. "Today we will discuss the strange request from the humans," Veltar announced, his voice carrying easily to every corner of the huge room. "This young species has asked to join our council, even though they have barely left their homeworld." The laughter started again, louder this time. Jake noticed that even some of the more serious-looking representatives were making what appeared to be amused gestures. A creature that looked like a cross between a giant crab and a tree raised several of its claw-like appendages. This was the Kethmori representative. When it spoke, its voice sounded like branches creaking in the wind. They still fight wars against their own kind. What could such a violent and primitive species possibly offer to our advanced civilization? Jake felt Colonel Bell tense up beside him. The military man's jaw was clenched and his hands were gripping the armrests of his chair. Jake placed a gentle hand on the colonel's arm to calm him down. Getting angry would not help their cause. Their technology is thousands of years behind. "Ours," added another representative, this one looking like a living statue made of blue stone. "Their mathematics are simple. Their science is basic. Their understanding of the universe is like that of children." "And yet," said Zechthel, clicking his mandibles together in what Jake knew was the Vorthak equivalent of a smile, "they have the confidence to ask for a place among us. It is almost admirable in the way that a pet's tricks can be admirable." The chamber erupted in what Jake was now certain was laughter. Some of the representatives were making gestures that were clearly meant to be insulting. Even if Jake did not understand exactly what they meant, Jake sat quietly through it all, watching and listening. He noticed which representatives laughed, the loudest, which ones seemed uncomfortable with the mockery, and which ones appeared to be genuinely curious about humanity despite their dismissive words. He also noticed something else. For all their talk about being advanced and civilized, these beings were acting very much like bullies in a schoolyard. They were picking on the new kid, trying to make themselves feel superior by putting someone else down. High Counselor Veltar raised his hand for silence. "We will now hear from the human representative," he announced. "Though I suspect this will be brief." Jake stood up slowly and began walking toward the center of the chamber. The laughter died down, but he could still hear whispers and comments from the assembled representatives. He knew they expected him to make some desperate plea for acceptance, or to try to impress them with humanity's limited achievements. They were wrong. Jake had not come here to beg. He had come here to teach. The Galaxy Council was about to learn something about humanity that they had never expected. They were about to discover that sometimes the newest and youngest species could see things that the oldest and most advanced had forgotten. As he reached the center of the chamber and turned to face the assembled representatives, Jake allowed himself a small smile. The real presentation was about to begin, and he was confident that by the time he was finished, nobody in this chamber would be laughing at humanity anymore. The Galaxy Council had mocked humanity from the moment they walked through the doors. But Jake Morrison was about to turn that mockery into respect. And he was going to do it using the one thing that these advanced civilizations had lost in their rush to evolve beyond their primitive origins. He was going to remind them what it meant to be truly brave. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the massive chamber, surrounded by dozens of alien beings who clearly thought he was wasting their time. The floating lights above cast strange shadows across his face as he looked around at the assembled representatives. He could feel their eyes on him, waiting for him to embarrass himself and his entire species. High Counselor Veltar gestured with one elegant hand toward a large screen that appeared in the air above them. "You may begin your presentation, human. Though I warn you that our time is valuable, and we have many important matters to discuss today." Jake nodded politely. "Thank you, High Counselor. I understand that time is precious." He touched a small device on his wrist, and suddenly the air above the chamber filled with a beautiful image of Earth. The blue and green planet slowly rotated, showing the white clouds swirling over the continents and oceans. "This is our home," Jake said simply. "We call it Earth. It is the third planet from our star, and it is where humanity was born." Zekthal clicked his mandibles impatiently. "Yes, we know about your little world. It is unremarkable. Small, primitive, populated by a single species that has not yet learned to live in peace with itself." "That is correct," Jake agreed, surprising many of the representatives. "We are indeed a single species on a small world. We have been fighting wars for most of our recorded history. We have made many mistakes, and we continue to make them." The ethereal collective's representative pulsed with what appeared to be satisfaction. "Then you admit that humanity is not ready to join civilized society. Perhaps you should return to your world and come back in a few thousand years when you have evolved beyond your primitive nature." Jake smiled. "Actually, I came here to discuss that very topic. Evolution, I mean. You see, every species represented in this chamber has evolved far beyond their original forms. You have developed amazing technologies, extended your lifespans, enhanced your abilities, and created wonders that humanity can barely imagine." The Kethmori representative waved several of its claw-like appendages. Finally, the monkey speaks sense. "We have indeed evolved beyond our crude beginnings. We have become something greater than what we once were." "Yes," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "You have evolved beyond many things. Beyond disease, beyond aging, beyond the limitations of your original bodies. You have become beings of pure energy, or enhanced biological forms, or mechanical constructs that last for millennia." The representatives began to sit up straighter, clearly pleased with this recognition of their achievements. Even High Counselor Veltar looked slightly more interested in what Jake was saying. "But I have a question," Jake continued. In all of this evolution, in all of this advancement beyond your primitive origins, what else have you left behind? The chamber fell silent. The question seemed to puzzle the assembled beings. A blue stone-like creature near the front raised what appeared to be its head. What do you mean, human? We have left behind weakness, stupidity, and the limitations that held our species back. Have you? Jake asked. Let me tell you about something that happened just last week in the Outer Rim territories. A cargo ship carrying medical supplies to the Zephyr colonies was attacked by pirates. The ship sent out a distress call, asking for help from any vessel in the area. Jake touched his wrist device again, and the image of Earth was replaced by a star map showing the Outer Rim. A small red dot blinked where the attack had taken place. There were 17 ships within range of that distress call, Jake continued. 17 different vessels from 12 different species, all of them with the technology and firepower to easily defeat the pirates and save the cargo ship. The representatives looked around at each other, clearly wondering where this story was going. Do you know how many of those ships responded to the distress call? Jake asked. The chamber remained silent. None, Jake said simply. Not a single? One. The cargo ship was destroyed, along with its crew of 23 beings from various species. The medical supplies that could have saved thousands of lives on the Zephyr colonies were lost. Zechthel's 4 arms gestured angrily. Pirates are dangerous. It would have been foolish to risk valuable ships and crews for strangers. Would it? Jake asked. The pirates had 3 small fighters. Any one of the 17 ships in the area could have defeated them without difficulty. But none of them were willing to take even that small risk to save the lives of strangers. The ethereal collective's representative pulsed with what might have been annoyance. We have responsibilities to our own species. It is not logical to endanger ourselves for beings we do not know. I see, Jake said. And is that the same logic that prevents your species from working together to solve the refugee crisis in the Andromeda sector? The same logic that allows the resource wars in the Beta Quadrant to continue for decades without intervention? The chamber was becoming uncomfortable. Several representatives shifted in their seats, and the background sounds of conversation had stopped completely. Let me tell you what would have happened if human ships had been in that area, Jake continued. The moment that distress call went out, every human vessel within range would have immediately changed course to help. They would not have asked about the species of the beings in danger. They would not have calculated the risks to their own safety. They would have simply gone to help, because that is what we do. That is foolish, said the Kethmori representative. Such behavior would lead to unnecessary losses, would it? Jake asked. In the past 50 years, humans have responded to over 4,000 distress calls in space. We have saved ships, crews, and cargo belonging to dozens of different species. Do you know how many human ships we have lost while responding to these calls? The representatives waited for his answer. 12, Jake said. 12 ships lost while saving thousands of lives and millions of tons of cargo. We consider that a very good trade. High Counselor Veltar leaned forward in his seat. You speak as if this reckless behavior is something to be proud of. I speak as if caring about others is something to be proud of, Jake replied. And I think that somewhere in your long evolution, in your rush to become more advanced and more logical and more perfect, you have forgotten something very important. What is that? Veltar asked. Jake looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many of the representatives as possible. You have forgotten that the strongest species are not the ones who can best protect themselves. The strongest species are the ones who are willing to protect others. The silence in the chamber was now complete. Even the humming of the life support system seemed to have stopped. That, Jake said quietly, is what humanity came here to offer. Not advanced technology, not superior weapons, not longer lifespans, or enhanced abilities. We came here to offer something that you have evolved beyond, but that the galaxy desperately needs. He paused, letting his words sink in. We came here to offer courage.